The massive alien ship appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It hung silently above the planet, twice the size of the largest human space station. Its dark metal surface absorbed light rather than reflected it. Frank Daniels watched the live feed from his small apartment in New Austin. At 58, his hair had gone completely white, but his back remained straight and his eyes sharp. 35 years in the Marines had left their mark, both visible in the scar that ran down his left cheek and invisible in the memories that still woke him at night. "They're calling in the veterans," said the newscaster. "The United Earth government has requested all military advisors with combat experience to report to regional command centers." Frank's communication device buzzed. He wasn't surprised. 6 hours later, he sat in a sterile conference room at the North American Defense Headquarters. Around the table were 15 others, men and women like him, with gray hair and watchful eyes. People who had seen war up close. "The aliens call themselves the Keldorians," said General Wright, pointing to the holographic display. "They've established an empire across 17 star systems. This is our first contact with any alien species, and they're already demanding, 'We submit to their authority.'" "Do we know their capabilities?" asked Elaine Murphy. She was in her early 50s with streaks of gray in her dark hair. Before becoming a military historian and xenoanthropologist, she had served as an intelligence officer in the Central Asian conflict. "Their technology is approximately 80 years ahead of ours," replied the general. "Faster ships, stronger, weapons, better shields. But they've agreed to diplomatic talks before taking any action." Frank leaned forward. "And they asked for veterans specifically?" "They requested to meet with our war leaders. We figured that meant you people. Not active military, but those with actual combat experience." "Makes sense," said Frank. "In war, theory and practice are different things." 3 days later, Frank, Elaine, and 5 other veterans stood in the massive United Earth government building in Geneva. The room had been prepared for the alien delegation, with careful attention to every detail. The Keldorians entered with an air of superiority. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent blue skin and 4 eyes positioned around their elongated heads. Each wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, decorated with symbols that Frank guessed represented military victories. "I am Commander Vextal," announced the leader in perfect English. Their translation technology was impressive. Chief military advisor to the Keldorian Emperor and Conqueror of the Proxima system. Frank stepped forward. "Major Frank Daniels." "United States Marine Corps, retired, I welcome you to Earth." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "You are old." "I am experienced," Frank corrected. "I fought in 3 wars over 4 decades of service." "Curious," said Vextal. "The Keldorian Empire does not waste its veterans. When warriors can no longer fight effectively, they are honored, then replaced." Elaine stepped forward. "On Earth, we value the wisdom our veterans provide. They are our most precious military resource." The aliens exchanged looks that seemed dismissive. They clearly didn't understand. The meeting moved to a large conference table. The humans sat on one side, the Keldorians on the other. Earth's top diplomats joined the veterans while the aliens remained exclusively military. "Let us be direct," said Vextal. "Earth has resources we require. You have a strategic position near a valuable jump point. The Keldorian Empire offers you a simple choice. Join us and provide tribute in resources and warriors, or face conquest." The room went silent. Then Frank laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Something amuses you, human?" asked Vextal. "Just remembering something," said Frank. "In 2120, during the Central Asian conflict, my unit was surrounded by enemy forces with superior numbers and equipment. They offered us similar terms. And what happened?" Frank's smile faded. "We buried them. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The lead Earth diplomat quickly intervened, suggesting a recess before tensions escalated further. In a private room, the Earth delegation gathered. "You're antagonizing them," said the diplomat, looking nervous. "No," said Elaine. "Frank's doing exactly what he should. The Keldorians respect strength. Their entire culture is built around military conquest. They're testing us. When negotiations resumed, the Keldorians presented detailed demands: 30% of Earth's mineral production, military access to Earth's solar system, and human soldiers to serve in their wars against other alien species. In exchange, said Vextal, we will provide limited technological assistance and protection from other potential threats. And if we refuse, asked the Earth diplomat, then we take what we want anyway. Your planet has never faced a true interstellar war. You have no concept of what real conflict entails. Frank felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear. He was too old for that. It was recognition. He had seen this before, in the eyes of every overconfident commander who thought victory was assured because they had better weapons. Commander Vextal, Frank said slowly, Earth has not known peace for more than 30 years at a time throughout our entire history. World War III ended just 3 decades ago. There are billions of us who remember what bombs sound like when they fall on our homes. The alien commander waved his hand dismissively. Primitive conflicts. You fought yourselves with rudimentary weapons. The Keldorian Empire has conquered species with technology far beyond yours. Elaine spoke up. Yet here you are, seeking to negotiate rather than simply attacking. Why? The question caught Vextal off guard. It is more efficient to gain compliance without expending military resources. Or perhaps, said Frank, your intelligence on Earth has revealed something that concerns you. The slight shift in the alien's posture told Frank he had hit a nerve. You have 48 Earth hours to accept our terms, Vextal announced abruptly. After that, we will demonstrate our power in a way you cannot ignore. After the aliens departed, the room erupted into urgent discussion. Plans were made, defenses organized. While politicians argued about appeasement, the veterans gathered in a smaller room. They'll hit a colony first, said Frank. Probably Mars, small enough to overwhelm quickly but important enough to make a statement. Agreed, said Elaine. And they expect us to fold after the first show of force. Frank nodded, slowly. They think they know war, but they've only known conquest. There's a difference. What do we do? Asked another veteran. Frank looked out the window at the peaceful Earth landscape, knowing it might not stay peaceful much longer. We prepare. We adapt. We do what Earth has always done when faced with a superior enemy. His eyes hardened with determination. We show them what real veterans can do. The Keldorian attack came exactly when Frank had predicted. Not against Earth itself, but against the Mars colony. The Red Planet, with its population of 20,000 miners, scientists, and their families, was supposed to be an easy target. Colonel, Grace Hoffman watched from the command center as 5 alien ships entered Mars orbit. At 62, she had been sent to the colony as a military advisor 3 years earlier. Most considered it a quiet retirement post. Now she was the highest-ranking officer on a planet about to be invaded. They're launching dropships, reported her communications officer. Estimate 200 soldiers in the first wave. Grace nodded calmly. She had fought in the Arctic resource wars where her unit had held off an enemy force 10 times their size for 6 brutal weeks. This was nothing new. Activate Plan Dust Bowl, she ordered. Across the main colony of New Armstrong, civilians moved quickly to predetermined shelters. They had been drilling for this scenario for 48 hours, ever since the warning came from Earth. Unlike the Keldorians, humans had taken the threat seriously. Jack Winters stood at the entrance to Mine, Shaft 7, watching the alien ships descend through the thin Martian atmosphere. At 45, he had spent 20 years in special forces before taking a job as security chief for the mining operation. The company had wanted his combat experience. They never expected him to actually use it. Everyone in position? He asked, into his comm unit. Ready, came the replies from his team. Not soldiers, but miners, engineers, and maintenance workers. People who knew every tunnel and air duct in the complex. The first Keldorian dropship landed half a mile from the mine entrance. Armored figures emerged, moving with precision and confidence. Their weapons were like nothing Jack had ever seen, but their tactics were familiar. Standard protocol for securing hostile territory. Jack smiled grimly. Standard tactics only worked against standard opponents. He waited until the aliens had advanced halfway to the mine entrance, then pressed a button on his wrist controller. The seemingly solid ground beneath the Keldorian squad collapsed. Not a natural sinkhole, but a carefully engineered trap filled with industrial cutting equipment normally used for breaking rocks. The machines activated simultaneously. The alien soldiers' screams echoed through their communication systems. The sound was different from human screams, but the meaning was the same. Across the Martian colony, similar traps sprung. The humans, outgunned and outarmored, refused to fight on the Keldorians' terms. They had spent 2 days rigging the entire colony with improvised weapons and traps. In the command center, Grace received reports from all sectors. The Keldorians had lost nearly 30% of their landing force in the first hour, without engaging in a single direct firefight. "Colonel," said her communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Keldorian commander." The alien's face appeared on the main screen. Commander Zrix looked furious, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "This is not honorable combat," he snarled. "You hide and use tricks rather than facing us directly." "There is no honor in war, Commander," Grace replied calmly. "Only survival. If you wanted a parade ground demonstration, you should have asked. Your primitive tactics will not save you. We have technology you cannot hope to match." Grace smiled, slightly. "Technology doesn't win wars. People who've lost everything and kept fighting do." She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. "They'll adapt soon. Time for Phase 2. In Mine Shaft 7, Jack and his team retreated deeper into the tunnels as the Keldorians advanced. The aliens had become more cautious, scanning for traps, moving slowly. "Remember," Jack told his people, "they need their suits to breathe in our atmosphere. Target the joints and air systems." The miners nodded. They didn't have military weapons, but they had cutting torches that could slice through metal, industrial chemicals that could eat through protective gear, and generations of knowledge on how to collapse tunnels at exactly the right moment. When the Keldorians entered the main chamber of the mine, they found it empty. They advanced carefully, weapons ready. None of them noticed the fine mineral dust filling the air until it was too late. One soldier activated his weapon, and the electrical discharge ignited the highly combustible particles. The explosion wasn't large, but in the confined space, it didn't need to be. The blast disabled the environmental systems on 3 Keldorian suits. The aliens inside began to suffocate in the thin Martian air. Above ground, the Keldorian commander grew increasingly frustrated. His forces had superior weapons, training, and armor, yet they were being picked apart by miners and scientists using primitive tools and knowledge of the terrain. He ordered orbital strikes against the colony's main power station. The massive energy beams from his ships turned the facility to ash in seconds. In the command center, now running on backup power, Grace received word of the attack with a grim smile. "Right on schedule," she said. "Send the signal to Earth." On the other side of Mars, far from the main colony, a communications array that had been carefully shielded from detection transmitted a message. "Operation Scorched Space is go." The Keldorian fleet commander, watching from orbit, felt confident, despite the ground losses. His ships controlled the space around Mars. No human vessel could approach without being destroyed. He had cut off the colony from support and would simply wait them out. He did not notice the 3 maintenance shuttles that had left Mars hours before the attack, drifting powered down among the orbital debris that surrounded the planet. Each shuttle contained a payload that human military planners had hoped never to use again. Tactical nuclear devices, remnants from World War III, retrofitted for space warfare. The shuttle's automated systems activated, their small thrusters pushing them gently toward 3 of the 5 Keldorian warships. By the time the aliens detected the approaching objects, it was too late. The explosions transformed the Martian night sky. 3 Keldorian ships, each with crews of hundreds, vaporized in nuclear fire. In the colony below, humans watched the flashes through reinforced windows. No one cheered. They knew the cost of such weapons better than most species in the galaxy. The 2 remaining Keldorian ships immediately retreated to a safer distance, their commanders frantically trying to understand what had happened. The Keldorian Empire had not suffered such losses in over a century of conquest. Back on Earth in the military command center, Frank Daniels watched the sensor data come in. The plan had worked, but he took no joy in it. He had seen too much death in his lifetime to celebrate more of it, even among enemies. The Mars colony reports 87% survival rate, Elaine informed him. Colonel Hoffman says they can hold out for at least 2 months with current supplies. Frank nodded. They won't need to. The Keldorians will be back, but not right away. They need to regroup and rethink their approach. Will they give up? Asked a younger officer. Frank shook his head. No, we've just made them angry. But we've also made them cautious. They thought this would be easy. His weathered face hardened. Now they know it won't be. Elaine looked at the tactical display, showing Keldorian fleet movements as they retreated from Mars. What's our next move? She asked. We activate the Veteran Reserve Corps, said Frank. All of them. Earth is going to need every person who's ever seen combat before this is over. He stared at the display, his mind already planning the battles to come. The Keldorians think they know war. We're about to show them what war really means. Frank looked out the window at the peaceful Earth landscape, knowing it might not stay peaceful much longer. We prepare. We adapt. We do what Earth has always done when faced with a superior enemy. His eyes hardened with determination. We show them what real veterans can do. Sam Rodriguez stood on the dock of his small fishing boat in the Gulf of Mexico, watching the military transport ship approach. At 62, his dark hair had gone mostly gray. Deep lines marked his weathered face. 25 years ago, he had been one of the most decorated Navy SEALs in history. Now he was just a fisherman who wanted to be left alone with his memories. The young officer who stepped onto his dock looked out of place in her crisp uniform. Samuel Rodriguez? She asked. Haven't used that name in a long time, Sam replied. It's just Sam now. Sir, I'm Lieutenant Garcia. Earth Defense Command has activated the Veteran Reserve Corps. All former Special Operations personnel are being called back as tactical advisors. Sam turned away, looking out at the water. I'm too old to fight. We don't need you to fight, sir. We need you to teach. The Keldorians are coming back and they're bringing their full fleet. Our active military has never faced anything like this. Sam closed his eyes. He had sworn never to return to war. But if he refused, others would die. Younger people who hadn't learned the hard lessons he had. Give me an hour to pack, he finally said. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Veterans who had hung up their uniforms years or decades ago answered the call once more. Not to serve as frontline soldiers, but as the teachers and planners who would prepare humanity for the greatest fight in its history. Lisa Bennett walked through the space combat simulator, watching as young recruits practiced boarding actions against a mock Keldorian vessel. At 55, she moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent years fighting in confined spaces. During the Mexico border crisis, she had commanded urban warfare units. Now she was developing techniques for close-quarters combat, in zero gravity. You're too focused on the front, she told the squad leader, a woman barely 30 years old. In space, there is no front. Attack from all directions simultaneously. The younger woman nodded respectfully. 2 weeks ago, she might have questioned taking orders from someone who had never served in space. Now she knew better. The veterans might not understand the technology, but they understood war in ways the active military never could. In orbit above Earth, engineers converted commercial cargo ships into what they called Q ships, vessels that appeared harmless but concealed. Powerful weapons. The idea came from World War II naval tactics, suggested by a 90-year-old veteran who had studied historical warfare. Frank Daniels stood in the main strategy room at Earth Defense Headquarters. The walls displayed holographic maps of the solar system. Red markers showed the approaching Keldorian fleet. 20 warships, 5 times what they had sent to Mars. They'll reach Jupiter's orbit in 3 days, said Elaine Murphy, studying the projections. We have the element of surprise, but they have the numbers and technology. Frank nodded. We need to divide their forces, draw some of them away from the main fleet. How? asked Admiral Diane Powell. At 68, she had fought in 3 Earth wars and now commanded humanity's hastily assembled Space Defense Force. "We give them something they want more than a quick victory," said Frank. "We give them revenge." The plan came together quickly. One human vessel, a retired military cruiser renamed the Wounded Wolf, would approach the Keldorian fleet near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. It would appear damaged, an easy target. When the Keldorians detached ships to capture it, the trap would spring. Sam Rodriguez led the training for the mission. The ship would carry only veteran volunteers, men and women over 50, who knew exactly what they were risking. "This isn't a suicide mission," he told them during briefing. "But it's close. We need to draw at least 5 of their ships away from their main fleet." A gray-haired woman raised her hand. "What makes you think they'll take the bait?" "Because they're warriors who've never lost," Sam replied. "And now humans have bloodied their nose. Their pride will make them sloppy." On the day of the battle, Admiral Powell watched from her command ship as the Keldorian fleet approached Jupiter. Just as Frank had predicted, when they detected the seemingly damaged human vessel, the Keldorians dispatched 6 ships to capture it. "They took the bait," she said quietly. What followed was not the honorable combat the Keldorians expected. The damaged human ship suddenly accelerated, leading the alien vessels into a dense field of icy debris around Europa. Hidden in that debris were 12 smaller human craft, each commanded by a veteran of submarine warfare. The Keldorians, focused on their prey, never saw the ambush coming. The human ships attacked from multiple vectors, using the ice fragments as cover. Their weapons were less powerful than the aliens, but they fired with precision at vulnerable points identified by Earth's intelligence teams. 2 Keldorian ships exploded immediately. A third lost propulsion and drifted helplessly. The remaining 3 regrouped and counterattacked, their superior firepower lighting up the space around Europa. Admiral Powell watched the sensor readings with growing concern. The human ships were taking heavy damage. "Wounded Wolf is hit," reported her communications officer. "Life support failing." Powell's hands tightened on the edge of her command console. The veterans on that ship had known the risks. Then something unexpected happened. The damaged human vessel deliberately rammed the lead Keldorian ship, its reactor going critical on impact. The explosion destroyed both vessels and disabled the systems on the 2 remaining alien ships. The Battle of Europa was over in less than 30 minutes. 6 Keldorian warships neutralized. 8 human ships destroyed. Hundreds of lives lost on both sides. In the aftermath, Powell's forces rescued survivors where possible. Among those recovered was Sam Rodriguez, badly injured but alive. As medical teams treated him, he grabbed Powell's arm. "Did it work?" he asked. "Yes," she told him. "The main Keldorian fleet has changed course. They're regrouping, reassessing." Sam nodded and closed his eyes. Back on Earth, the Keldorian Military Council sent a communication directly to the human leadership. Commander Vextal's face showed a new emotion: uncertainty. "You have fought unexpectedly," he said. "Your tactics violate all established protocols of honorable warfare." Frank Daniels, representing Earth in the transmission, laughed softly. "Honor is a luxury of those who've never had to fight for survival. We gave that up centuries ago. Your warriors are old, using obsolete equipment and primitive strategies." Vextal continued. "Yet you defeated our elite ships. How is this possible?" "You don't understand what you're facing," Frank replied. "Your soldiers are bred for war. Ours have lived through it. Every human veteran carries scars you can't see and knowledge you can't program." The Keldorian commander was silent for a moment. "The Empire has conquered 17 systems. We will not be deterred by these losses." "We know," said Frank. "That's why we've just activated 5 million more veterans. People who fought in wars when I was still a child. People who remember what it means to face annihilation." After the transmission ended, Elaine approached Frank. "They're still coming, aren't they?" Frank nodded. "Yes, but now they're afraid. They don't fight like we do. They don't fight like survivors." Across the solar system, humanity prepared. The veterans led by example, teaching from experience rather than textbooks. They didn't just train soldiers how to fight. They taught them how to think when everything went wrong, how to improvise when technology failed, how to keep going when all hope seemed lost. The Keldorians think this is about military power, Frank told Earth's leaders. It's not. It's about who wants to survive more. As the reorganized alien fleet approached Earth once again, humanity's veterans stood ready. The real war was about to begin. The Keldorian Empire had never experienced true crisis. For 3 centuries, they had conquered without facing significant losses. Their society glorified war, but had forgotten its cost. Now, as reports of defeated ships reached the Keldorian homeworld, their military council faced something new: doubt. On Earth, humanity prepared not for defense but for a counterattack. General Alan Foster limped through the war room, his artificial leg making a soft whirring sound with each step. At 72, he was one of the oldest active commanders in Earth's military. He had lost his leg 30 years ago in the Pan-Asian War. "Operation Gideon is ready," he announced to the assembled leaders. In his hand, he held something that made the younger officers stare in confusion. A paper map, folded and worn at the edges. "Sir," said a young captain, "we have holographic displays with real-time updates." Alan smiled patiently. "Electronic systems fail, son. Paper doesn't." He spread the map on the table. It showed the Keldorian supply lines extending from their home system to Earth. "We're not going to attack their fleet or their military bases. We're going after their support network." It was a strategy as old as warfare itself, but one the Keldorians had never needed to defend against. Their previous enemies had always tried to match them in direct combat. Humans knew better. Vice Admiral Olivia Harris studied the plan carefully. "We'll need a diversion to draw attention from the main thrust." "Already arranged," said Alan. "We've prepared Operation Fortitude, based on a deception from World War II. The Keldorians will detect what appears to be a major fleet assembling near Mercury, when in reality, the real attack comes from behind Saturn's rings," Olivia finished, "using the planet's magnetic field to hide our approach until it's too late." Alan nodded. "Exactly." The Keldorians, despite their losses, remained confident in their ultimate victory. Their supreme commander, Draxcon, had brought their elite immortal guard to lead the final assault on Earth. These warriors, bred specifically for combat and equipped with the Empire's most advanced technology, had never known defeat. What the Keldorians didn't understand was the fundamental difference in how they approached war. For them, war was a profession, a path to glory. For humans, especially the veterans now leading Earth's forces, war was a burden, something endured rather than celebrated. The human task force assembled quietly in the shadow of Saturn. 50 ships, many of them converted civilian vessels crewed by a mix of young soldiers and older veterans. Leading them was a special operations team that had quickly become legendary within Earth's military, the Old Ghosts. Every member of the Old Ghosts was over 60 years old. Their commander, Major Paul Johnson, had white hair and needed reading glasses, but his mind remained razor-sharp. Under his leadership, the team had trained for one specific mission, taking control of the Keldorians' primary fuel processing facility in the outer solar system. "Remember," Paul told his team as they prepared to board their transport, "we're not stronger or faster than they are. We're just more stubborn." The veterans chuckled. They had all survived wars when they were young. Now, in the twilight of their lives, they had one more battle to fight. The attack began with a feint. Earth's apparent main fleet near Mercury suddenly advanced toward the Keldorian positions. The aliens responded predictably, moving to intercept with overwhelming force. The same moment, the true attack launched from Saturn. Using minimal communications and engines running at reduced power, the human ship slipped through the gaps in Keldorian sensor coverage. Alan Foster watched from the command ship as the operation unfolded. Beside him was Frank Daniels, who had insisted on joining the mission despite having no official role. "The Keldorians are still thinking like conquerors," Frank observed. "They expect us to defend, not attack." Alan nodded. Pride is their weakness. They can't imagine losing to what they see as an inferior species. The first Keldorian facility fell without firing a shot. The human ships approached using captured Keldorian transponder codes, and boarding teams secured the station before the aliens realized what was happening. The second target, a communications relay, proved more difficult. The Keldorians detected the approaching humans and prepared their defenses. What followed was a brutal close-quarters battle through narrow corridors. Lisa Bennett led one of the boarding teams, putting her urban warfare experience to use in the confined spaces of the station. The older veterans moved more carefully than their younger counterparts, but they moved with purpose and precision, born from decades of experience. "Don't waste ammunition on their armor," Lisa called to her team as they advanced. "Target the joints and visual sensors just like we practiced." The Keldorians fought fiercely, but they were unprepared for human adaptability. When standard tactics failed, the veterans improvised using the station's own systems against the defenders. As the operation continued, the Keldorian Supreme Commander realized he had been deceived. He ordered his fleet to abandon the position near Mercury and intercept the real human attack force. But it was too late. By the time his ships arrived, humans had captured or destroyed 5 critical supply facilities. The final target was the main fuel processing station, guarded by the Keldorian Immortal Guard. These elite warriors stood ready as the human ships approached, expecting a direct assault. Instead, the old ghosts deployed in a way the Keldorians never anticipated. Using small, one-person craft that barely registered on sensors, they approached from multiple vectors simultaneously. Each veteran carried decades of combat experience and a simple mission: reach the station's control center at any cost. Of the ED-12 who launched, only 7 made it inside the station. Major Paul Johnson led the survivors through service tunnels and maintenance shafts, bypassing the main Keldorian defenses entirely. The aliens, expecting an attack from the main docking bays, were caught completely off guard when the elderly humans emerged directly into the control center. Paul, bleeding from a wound in his side, secured the main console while his team established a defensive perimeter. With practiced movements that defied his age, he initiated the shutdown sequence for the entire facility. Alarms blared as the station's systems began to power down. The Keldorian Immortal Guard responded immediately, converging on the control center with overwhelming force. "How long do we need to hold?" asked one of the veterans, an old woman whose steady hands belied her 70 years. 10 minutes, Paul replied, checking his watch. An actual mechanical timepiece, not a digital display. Just 10 minutes for the shutdown to complete. They held for 12. When the last of the old ghosts fell, the station was already dark, its fuel production capability destroyed. Throughout the solar system, similar scenes played out as Earth forces struck at the Keldorian supply network. The alien fleet, designed for swift conquest rather than extended conflict, suddenly found itself low on fuel and resources, cut off from resupply. The Keldorian Supreme Commander, Draxcon, demanded answers from his intelligence division. How could they anticipate our movements so precisely? How could their outdated ships defeat our advanced technology? In frustration, he ordered the capture of human officers for interrogation. One of those taken was Major Paul Johnson, found barely alive in the control center of the fuel facility. Under harsh questioning, the elderly human remained defiant. When Draxcon demanded to know how humans kept adapting to Keldorian tactics, Paul simply said, "War isn't our profession. It's our burden. We carry it so our children won't have to." The words made no sense to the Supreme Commander. In Keldorian society, war was the highest calling, the path to status and power. As Earth forces continued to strike at vulnerable points in the Keldorian military infrastructure, the alien command realized a terrible truth. They were not losing to a superior military force. They were losing to people who had spent their lives finding ways to end wars, not prolong them. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Keldorian Emperor considered the unthinkable: negotiation. The Keldorian Emperor Varzik stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. In 3 centuries of imperial expansion, he had never personally traveled to a battlefield. This war with humans had changed everything. "The peace delegation is ready, Your Majesty," said Commander Vextal, his once confident voice now subdued. The Emperor nodded. "And our demands?" Vextal hesitated. "Our military advisors suggest we should be prepared for unexpected terms." This was unprecedented. The Keldorian Empire had never negotiated as equals with another species. Their pattern was simple: overwhelming victory followed by generous terms to the defeated. But Earth had not been defeated. Despite inferior technology and resources, humans had fought the Empire to a standstill. On Earth, the United World Government prepared for the meeting. They chose an unusual location, the plains of Kansas, where wheat fields stretched to the horizon. No military installations, no cities, just open farmland under a blue sky. "Why here?" asked a young diplomat looking around in confusion. Frank Daniels gazed at the fields. "To show them what we're fighting for. Not glory or conquest, but this." He gestured to the peaceful landscape. "The right to live quietly, to grow things, to grow old in peace." The Earth delegation was unlike any diplomatic team in human history. Led by retired General Catherine Miller, it consisted entirely of veterans ranging in age from 50 to 90. Some used canes or wheelchairs. All carried the invisible weight of war memories. Catherine had insisted on one unusual addition to the meeting site: a portable version of the memorial wall listing Earth's war dead throughout recorded history. The black granite panels stretched, longer than many expected, each name etched in solemn remembrance. The Keldorian ships landed with military precision. Emperor Varzik emerged surrounded by guards, his iridescent blue skin catching the sunlight. He was taller than the average Keldorian, with 6 small horns denoting his royal status. The Emperor approached the human delegation expecting to see fear or at least deference. Instead, he saw something he couldn't quite identify in their aged faces. It wasn't hatred. It was something more complex. "I am Emperor Varzik, ruler of the 17 systems of the Keldorian Empire," he announced. "I have come to discuss the terms of your surrender." Catherine Miller stepped forward, her silver hair shining in the sun. "I am General Catherine Miller, retired. We are not here to surrender, Emperor Varzik. We are here to end this war." The Emperor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of surprise. "You cannot hope to defeat our full might. The forces you have faced are only a fraction of our military capability." Catherine nodded. "And yet those forces have suffered unprecedented losses. You could send more ships, more soldiers. We would lose many people. You would lose many more. In the end, what would either of us gain?" She gestured toward the memorial wall. "Every name on this wall represents a human who died in war. Not just our war with you. Wars amongst ourselves, stretching back thousands of years." The Emperor approached, the wall curious. "You record all your war dead, even from conflicts between human factions?" "Especially those," Catherine said quietly, "to remind us of the cost of fighting each other." The Keldorian delegation examined the wall with growing confusion. There were millions of names, from ancient conflicts to modern wars. "I don't understand," said Vextal. "Why display your failures? Your species has obviously killed itself in great numbers. This shows weakness." Frank stepped forward. "No. It shows learning. Each name taught us something about the cost of war. We've been killing each other since we first picked up stones and sticks. We've had more practice at war than any species you've ever encountered." The Emperor's expression changed as understanding began to dawn. "This is why your veterans fight differently. You're not simply following military doctrine, We're trying to end the fighting," Catherine finished for him, "not extend it. Every veteran on Earth carries one certainty. War should be the last option, not the first." The peace talks that followed defied the Emperor's expectations. The humans did not demand reparations or territory. They did not insist on Keldorian disarmament or subjugation. Instead, they proposed a mutual defense agreement and open trade. These terms are surprisingly lenient, the Emperor said cautiously. They're practical, Frank replied. We don't want your empire. We don't want your resources. We just want to live without fear of invasion. And if we reject these terms? Asked Vexatel. Catherine's expression hardened slightly. Then we continue fighting. And we've only just started to show you what humans are capable of when truly threatened. The Emperor considered this. His military had advised him that conquering Earth would now require a commitment of forces so vast it would leave the rest of the Empire vulnerable. The humans had demonstrated a capacity for adaptation and sacrifice that no other species had shown. I will accept these terms, the Emperor finally said. But I have one question. One of your captured officers, an elderly human named Paul Johnson, said something I do not understand. He said war is your burden, not your profession. Catherine looked at the Emperor directly. Those who truly know war don't wish it on anyone, even their enemies. The agreement was signed that day under the open Kansas sky. As the Keldorian delegation prepared to depart, the Emperor made an unexpected request. Our military academies would benefit from understanding your perspective. Would Earth consider sending veterans as instructors? 1 year later, Frank Daniels stood before a class of young Keldorian officer candidates. Now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Keldorian homeworld, he had volunteered to teach at their military academy. Today, he told the blue-skinned cadets, we're not going to discuss tactics or strategy. We're going to talk about the true cost of war and why victory sometimes means finding a way not to fight. The Keldorians listened with growing interest. Their society, built around military conquest for centuries, was slowly beginning to change. Frank had also established something previously unthinkable, an interspecies veteran support group where Keldorian and human veterans shared their experiences. The similarities in their nightmares, their losses, and their hopes transcended biological differences. On the anniversary of the peace agreement, a ceremony was held at a new memorial on the Keldorian homeworld. Built in the style of Earth's memorial wall, it listed the names of all Keldorians who had died in the conflict with humans. Sam Rodriguez, still walking with the help of a cane from his injuries, stood beside a Keldorian admiral as they observed the ceremony. Your species defeated our best forces despite being physically weaker and technologically inferior, the admiral said. I still don't fully understand how. Sam watched as human and Keldorian veterans placed symbolic tokens at the base of the memorial. We fought so effectively because we were old, he said simply. I don't understand, replied the admiral. Age is a weakness in combat. No, Sam shook his head. Age is wisdom. Every human veteran knew exactly what was at stake, not victory, survival, not just our own but everyone we loved. That's something no training simulation can teach you. As the sun set on the Keldorian capital, human and alien veterans stood, together in respectful silence. They remained different in many ways, but they shared an understanding that transcended language and biology, that the true purpose of strength is not conquest, but protection. The Keldorian Empire continued to exist, but its fundamental nature began to shift. Rather than expanding through conquest, it started to grow through alliance and cooperation, with Earth as its first true partner rather than subject. And throughout known space, a new phrase entered the lexicon of species who might consider aggression against either world. Beware the old humans. They do not fight for glory or riches or conquest. They fight to end fighting, and they are very, very good at it.